Well, talking about having people who believe in you were at QPR when Eberechi Eze was at QPR as well, and you've seen him kind of progress and develop. But he talked about being around good people, being around the right people. Is Arsenal the right place for him?
Yeah, I certainly believe it is. And, you know, when he left QPR, being honest, I felt he could go to Arsenal then. I felt he could go to anywhere in the country. And, you know, people might say it was the right step for him to go to Crystal Palace. I'm not disrespecting Crystal Palace in any way, shape or form. But he's one of those players that when he plays with better players, he will become better and he'll see the spaces and he'll go into those areas and become a better player. And, you know, just seeing him there and listening to that interview there, and I just think about when we used to watch him play, and, you know, Paul Hall, Andrew Impey, Chris Ramsey were major sort of like parts of his development. And we knew that he had what I call flavour. So you give him the ball, he could go past people, he could take people on. And if he didn't do it, you'd just hear a voice in the background going, if he got it and he just played it backwards, you'd hear his voice go, boring. And look at Chris Ramsey. Chris would go to him, what are you doing? Yeah. You can go past people. That's why you're on the pitch, to go past people.
It's terrifying when someone faces you up and runs at you.
And so when I see him play now, you know, I watched him in the England game and I thought, I shouted boring a few times at the telly because he's in there, because he can do those bits and pieces.
Best position, Les?
For me, I always swim as a number 10, playing in that sort of like just behind the striker. You know, all those two. You know, if you're playing two and the one up front, because he finds those areas, and what he can do, he can score goals as well. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't want to take that from his game by playing him in midfield and not allowing him to get forward. Yeah. But then you saw what he did in the last game, where he played that pass from.
But that's the two sides, I think. Yeah, that's exactly. The two sides of him when you play him centrally, because the goal he gets in midweek in the Carabao Cup, he just opens up his body, plays it into the net, and then the pass is it's like a quarterback, you know, getting into the pocket and just delivering the perfect ball. The flight of it was ideal. Obviously, Martinelli finished it beautifully, but I'm with you, Les. You know, I get some games, yes, you can play him off the wide left and he can cut inside, but I think when he's in that 10 role and he can just make things happen, but that becomes a braver move for the manager, because it's easy sometimes to sat with three more formidable types, if you like, but when you play Eze, you're asking for a little bit, what did you say? I love that word, flavour. A bit more extra flavour, a bit more sauce.
Seasoned, a
bit more seasoning, yeah. But he's a beautiful player to watch. I think he's so easy on the eye, and he is a joy, you know, and I've actually met him a couple of times, as we were both talking about off air, what a lovely kid he is as well. He deserves this.
I've played with some great players in my career, and I'd put him in the top 3 or 4 players that I've ever played. And I never played with Eze, but just seeing him what he does, I'd put him in the top echelons of the 3 or 4 best players I've ever played
just
with.
Just very quickly, because we'll talk about Arsenal more generally in a second, but on Eze, just personally, to see him, you know, be at Arsenal as a kid and then for them to go and pay big money to get him back, it's satisfying for him and kind of on a personal level. But in terms of Arsenal's start to the season, I mean, there are Arsenal fans who would argue that it's been tough. They played Liverpool and Manchester City, and that maybe they're coming into a more manageable group of fixtures now. But you look at that, they've got this game against Newcastle where they haven't got a great record. They've got Crystal Palace, who've been great. Fulham's been a tricky game for Arsenal in the past as well. And then the North London derby towards the end of November. It's not necessarily an easy run, particularly.
To win the Premier League is not an easy run. But when I look at this Arsenal side, and I look at the rest of the table and the rest of the teams in it, most of those players would get into virtually 85% of the teams in the league, maybe more. You know, 90% of those players that they've got, and even the players in reserves would get into most teams in the Premier League. I think they've got the best squad. And it's now I think the only problem they've got is the manager picking the right players on any given day to play in the game. But when I look at their squad, I don't see many squads better than them.
A few people have been right in them. They are right in this title race. They're going to go all the way. You know, it's whether they can actually do it, but the players and the quality they have in their squad, in depth as well, is what's going to be the difference.
And it's hard for me to say that.
Yeah. Who'd have thought we'd have been making title predictions 6 games into the new season?